You really think you belong here?" The words sliced through the cold morning air before she even turned around. It wasn't shouted, just spoken loudly enough for everyone in formation to hear. And for a split second, the compound fell silent, as if the entire place was waiting to see how she would react. Before we get started, be sure to subscribe to Hero Tales by Jacob channel so you never miss these fascinating tales of courage. And let us know in the comments where you're watching today. Sergeant Emily Carter didn't flinch. She had expected something like this the moment she stepped onto the training field, expected the doubts, the sneers, the sideways glances. She had spent years preparing for this day, and yet, the sting of the comment still pressed against her nerves. She tightened the strap of her boot and slowly lifted her head, letting the rising sun wash over the steel-gray lines of the Navy Special Warfare Training Center. It was supposed to be a fresh beginning. Instead, it already felt like a battlefield. Commander Michael Grant, the man whose reputation alone could intimidate half the candidates into quitting, stood at the far end of the field, watching, calculating. His eyes moved down the line of 24 recruits until they reached her. He didn't say a word, but Emily could read the skepticism written in the tension of his jaw. Grant had seen thousands attempt this program over his 20-year career. Most had failed, and he had made no secret of his doubts about women attempting SEAL selection, even unofficially. The thought tightened in her chest, but she forced herself to breathe evenly. She hadn't come here to win approval. She had come here to withstand whatever they threw at her, and more. The whistle blew sharply. The first challenge was a 12-mile endurance run across uneven terrain, nothing she hadn't done before, but the stakes were different now. The men surged ahead in a burst of energy, some throwing quick glances at her, as if daring her to fall behind. Emily ignored them, running with long, steady strides, letting the rhythm guide her breathing. The soil shifted beneath her boots, and the cold morning air scraped her lungs, but she stayed near the front. Not pushing too hard, not showing off, just proving she belonged here. Behind her, she could hear the panting, the curses, the slip of boots against rocks. Some were already losing pace, yet she kept moving like a metronome, calculated, consistent, disciplined. When they reached the 20-foot rope climb, her palms burned instantly against the coarse fibers. She didn't hesitate. Up she went, hand over hand, legs locked, body straight, each movement controlled. When she slapped the metal ring at the top, several men below looked up with a mix of surprise and irritation. But she didn't revel in it. She simply descended and waited for the next order. The Pacific Ocean awaited them next, violent, freezing, relentless. Emily inhaled the salty sting and dove into the churning water. The cold wrapped around her like a fist, but she welcomed it. She'd grown up on the coast of North Carolina, where the Atlantic tides had been her escape and her training ground. These waters were harsher, but she understood them instinctively. While others gasped and struggled, she cut through the waves with long, powerful strokes. From the shoreline, Commander Grant watched her with a raised brow. Not approval, just interest. A shift, small but noticeable. Hours later, the recruits were ordered into 6-person groups for log carries, the exercise notorious for breaking egos and bodies alike. Emily's assigned team didn't hide their displeasure. A large, broad-shouldered former Marine named Rogers muttered just loud enough for others to hear. "Try not to slow us down, sweetheart." The word hit like gravel. She steadied her breath, placed her shoulder under the rough wood, and lifted. The pressure shot down her spine, but she anchored her feet, adjusting for the imbalance caused by the men intentionally. Shifting weight away from her side. Halfway through the sand, Rogers stumbled. The huge log dipped dangerously, threatening to fall. Emily reacted instantly. She shifted her body, absorbing more weight, stabilizing the log before it crashed. Rogers shot her a quick, startled glance, one he tried to mask with a grunt. Commander Grant noticed. His eyes narrowed thoughtfully as he jotted something on his clipboard. By sunset, exhaustion cut through every muscle in Emily's body. The salt clung to her skin. Her fingers felt swollen, her legs sluggish. But the day was far from over. Night navigation drills began at dusk. No lights, no landmarks, just a compass and a map. The forest ahead was a maze of shadows, each branch seeming to move with the breeze like reaching fingers. Emily crouched at the tree line, studying her route. She traced alternate paths, marking silent checkpoints in her mind the way she had practiced for years. Then she moved into the darkness, quiet, fluid, measured. The forest swallowed her. Twigs cracked beneath her boots. The canopy above smothered the moonlight. Yet she kept her direction, adjusting for slope, deadfall, and shifting winds. When she reached the first checkpoint, only 3 others had beaten her there. At the second checkpoint, she found Will Harris slumped against a tree, pale and disoriented. His compass shook in his hands. "I think mine is broken," he muttered. Emily recognized the signs of mental fatigue. She knelt beside him, checked his compass, then gently corrected his grip. "It's not broken," she said quietly. "You're just reading it off axis. Here, watch my hands." She spent precious minutes explaining the technique she'd mastered long ago. She knew the delay could cost her ranking, but she didn't care. People mattered more than points. When Will finally stood, "Steadier now," he whispered, "I owe you." Emily reached the final checkpoint among the top 5. Commander Grant waited there, leaning on his clipboard, the shadows deepening around him. He examined her face, searching for cracks, desperation, panic. He found none. "Not bad, Carter," he said finally, voice roughened by years of command. "But this was just warm-up. Tomorrow, the Real training begins." Emily nodded. Her muscles trembled. Her lungs still burned from cold water. But her voice was steady. "I'll be ready, sir." That night, lying on her bunk, she allowed her exhaustion to settle in. Every bone hurt, every joint protested. But beneath that pain lived something fierce, an ember refusing to die out. She wasn't just surviving the day. She was beginning her ascent. The sky was still dark when the whistle shrieked again, sharp, merciless, and far too soon. Emily felt the weight of exhaustion pressing down on her chest as she swung her legs off the bunk, but there was no room for hesitation. Not here. Not now. Her joints protested as she stood, but she forced her body into motion, sliding into her damp uniform with the same quiet determination that had carried her through day 1. Outside, the cold stung like needles. The other recruits gathered in the half-light, eyes sunken, shoulders stiff. Some glared at her as she joined the formation. Others avoided looking at her entirely. Emily had grown used to both reactions. Commander Grant stepped forward, arms crossed behind his back. His presence alone silenced the murmurs. "Hell Week," he announced, his voice echoing against the concrete walls, "is where we separate the hopeful from the committed, the willing from the capable." His gaze swept across the formation, finally resting on her. "Over 60% of candidates quit here. You'll be cold, wet, hungry, sleep-deprived, and pushed beyond anything your bodies think they can handle. If you're going to break, it'll happen in the next 6 days." Emily inhaled deeply, feeling the anticipation, anxiety, yes, but also something fiercer, tighten her chest. Hell Week. She had been waiting for this. The first 20 hours unfolded like a blur. Running, crawling, carrying logs, dragging boats across sand, plunging into the freezing surf again and again. Emily felt her body shifting into a trance-like rhythm, a mixture of instinct, stubbornness, and muscle memory. Her mind tried to wander once or twice, whispering thoughts of warmth, rest, escape. She forced those thoughts into silence. Quitting was not an option. During the first extended surf torture session, Emily lay shoulder to shoulder with the other recruits as waves crashed over their bodies. Water soaked through her uniform, chilling her to the spine. Rogers lay beside her, teeth chattering violently, muttering curses under his breath. Even in the freezing water, he managed to glare at her, as if her presence worsened his misery. When the instructors turned away, she tilted her head just enough to whisper, "Stay focused. Think of something warm. You can outlast this." Rogers stared at her with stunned disbelief. Helping him made no tactical sense. He had been her loudest critic. And yet, she offered encouragement anyway. In misery, enemies became equals. He didn't thank her, but his breathing steadied. By the second day, trembling hands and unfocused eyes had become normal. The men who strutted with confidence hours earlier now stumbled, tripping over their own exhaustion. The sand clung to their uniforms and skin like it was trying to bury them alive. During a brutal log carry, Emily noticed Henderson, tall, usually steady, always near the front, begin to wobble. His eyes glazed, his steps uneven. She didn't say a word. She simply drifted closer, subtly lifting more of the log's weight without drawing attention. Henderson blinked, realization flickering in his eyes, but he said nothing. Grant, watching from his jeep, scribbled something on his clipboard. When night fell, the real torture began. The ocean no longer felt like water, more like knives. 3 times, Emily lost feeling below her knees. Twice she wondered if her arms still belonged to her. Some recruits hallucinated, calling out to people who weren't there or reacting to shadows that weren't moving. Emily felt the edges of delirium creep in, but she clung to her training. Focus on the next breath, the next step, the next command. Nothing else. Will Harris shuffled toward her during a brief break, his face pale and trembling. I don't know if I can make it, he whispered. Everything hurts. My vision's going blurry. Emily studied him, saw the fear, the exhaustion, the shame. She had been there once, years ago, during Afghanistan. She knew the look. Just think about the next hour, she murmured. Not tomorrow. Not the rest of the week. Just 60 minutes. You already made it this far. Don't give up now. Will nodded slowly, grounding himself in her words. On the 4th night, sleep deprivation hit them harder than the cold ever could. Emily blinked at shadows that stretched and twisted in unnatural shapes. Her mind whispered things that weren't real. And at some point during the night navigation drill, she saw flickers of movement that made her pulse spike, figures that vanished when she looked directly at them. She focused on her compass. The needle didn't lie. Her brain did. Suddenly, Commander Grant stepped beside her out of the darkness, his presence so quiet she nearly stumbled. How are you holding up, Carter? He asked. She swallowed. Her voice cracked slightly. Still here, sir. Grant studied her, not with condescension, but with something sharper. Something almost curious. Why? He asked quietly. Why stay? What's driving you when everything in your body is screaming to quit? The question cut deeper than any instructor's shout. Emily hesitated. She thought of her mother's sacrifices, her brother's memory, the women who had been told no for decades, the young girls who might one day say yes because she proved they could. I'm not just carrying myself, she finally said. I'm carrying every woman who never got the chance. Grant's jaw tightened. A heavy burden, he said. But eventually, that kind of burden won't be enough. When that happens, you'll need to decide who you're doing this for. And why. He walked away, leaving her alone with the question. It echoed through her mind long after the drill ended. By the 5th morning, only 12 recruits remained. The sun rose slowly, casting long golden streaks across the beach as they sat slumped in the sand. Exhausted, filthy, trembling. None of them spoke. None needed to. Surviving hell created its own language. Grant approached, his expression unreadable. Congratulations, he said, voice softer than usual. You survived Hell Week. But don't get comfortable. Real training starts now. Emily lifted her gaze and looked at the men sitting beside her. Rogers, Henderson, Will, men who once doubted her, resented her, dismissed her. Now, they simply nodded, acknowledging her, accepting her, welcoming her as one of them. For the first time, Emily felt it too. She belonged. 2 months had passed since Hell Week, yet its echoes still lingered in Emily's bones. The bruises had faded, but the lessons remained carved into her muscles, her instincts, her resolve. The remaining trainees, now a tight-knit group forged through shared misery, moved with a quiet confidence. They no longer looked at Emily with doubt. There was respect now, a mutual understanding that couldn't be faked or forced. Hardship had bonded them in ways words never could. Training had shifted from endurance to precision. Gone were the endless miles of running and the punishing surf drills. Now, Emily found herself navigating scenarios that demanded tactical intelligence, strategic thinking, and razor-sharp instincts. Commander Grant watched her closely during each operation, his once skeptical gaze now sharpened with something she couldn't fully read. One cold morning, Emily and her diving partner, Ryan McLean, surfaced from an underwater demolition drill, pulling off their masks as they gasped for air. Their breaths formed clouds in the frigid wind. Grant stood at the pool's edge, stopwatch in hand. Time was acceptable, he remarked, voice even. But your approach was too direct. In the real world, that path would have gotten you both shot. Emily nodded, resisting the urge to defend herself. Grant's critiques were harsh, but they were honest, and she valued honesty more than comfort. Later that afternoon, she received a summons to Grant's office. The room was small, sparsely decorated, filled only with framed commendations and a single photo of Grant with his former team. Emily stood at attention as he flipped through her evaluation file. Your tactical scores place you in the top 5% of all candidates, he said finally. And your leadership evaluations are even higher. Her pulse quickened, but she kept her face neutral. I'm recommending you for the advanced leadership track, Grant continued. Normally, candidates only receive this after completing basic SEAL qualification. But you're ready now. For a few seconds, Emily couldn't breathe. That is a rare recommendation, sir, she managed. Grant's eyes softened, just slightly. It's not one I give lightly. Which is why I'm warning you. Taking this path will paint a target on your back. There are still people in the upper chain who think women don't belong here. Your success threatens them. Emily felt a familiar heat rise in her chest. Part anger, part determination. I accept, sir. I figured you would. Grant stood. Report to Building C tomorrow at 0500. And Carter. He paused, choosing his words. Trust yourself. The skills that got you this far aren't luck. The next morning marked the beginning of a new kind of crucible. The instructors in Building C were different from what Emily had grown used to, quiet, unreadable, almost surgical in their approach. They didn't shout. They didn't berate. They simply constructed scenarios designed to make her fail, and then watched how she handled the fallout. She commanded hostage rescues, coordinated multi-team maneuvers, and made split-second decisions that simulated real-world consequences. In one scenario, she had to evacuate a U.S. ambassador from a hostile embassy while an entire insurgent battalion closed in. In another, she had to choose between saving a wounded teammate or completing a mission that could prevent future attacks. There were no perfect answers, only choices, and choices carried weight. The pressure ate at her some nights, filling her dreams with the sound of gunfire and voices calling for help. But every morning, she woke up sharper, steadier, more certain. She was no longer just training to survive, she was training to lead. During a particularly complex embassy simulation, one of her assigned operatives was injured, a test of her adaptability under duress. Emily made the hard decision to redistribute tasks, shifting the team structure mid-mission. The instructors later grilled her for 20 minutes on why she chose that path, probing every emotional crack. But she didn't falter. She had learned to stand her ground. Word of her performance spread across the base. Some officers watched her with admiration, others with hostility. The whispers grew, quiet at first, then louder, reaching even the upper ranks. A woman this competent disrupted old narratives. A week later, she was summoned again, this time not by Grant, but by Vice Admiral Patricia Hawthorne, one of the highest-ranking officers in the Navy. The kind of meeting junior personnel only dreamed, or feared, having. Hawthorne's office overlooked the ocean, sunlight cutting across her metals like liquid gold. Lieutenant Carter, the Admiral greeted, gesturing to the chair across from her. Your recent evaluations have reached my desk. Impressive work. Thank you, ma'am. But with impressive work comes scrutiny, Hawthorne continued. Washington is watching you. Some see you as the future. Others see you as a threat. Emily straightened her posture. I'm aware of the politics, ma'am. Hawthorne's lips curved, half amusement, half approval. Good. Because I have a proposition for you. There's an upcoming joint training exercise with International Special Forces. High profile. Broadcast across multiple Allied commands. I want you to lead the American team. Emily's breath caught. A multinational exercise meant pressure unlike anything she had experienced. Every move would be recorded, analyzed, judged. Failure wouldn't just reflect on her. It could reflect on the entire program. What's the mission profile? She asked. Urban counterterrorism, Hawthorne replied. Multiple hostage scenarios. Multi-team coordination. You'll be working with Britain, Australia, Canada, Germany. Some have never worked with a woman in command. The challenge sparked something fierce inside her. I'll do it, Emily said. I thought you might. Hawthorne smiled. Your preparation begins next week. As Emily left the office, ocean wind ruffling her hair, she felt the weight of leadership settle on her shoulders, not as a burden, but as a mantle she had finally grown into. She wasn't surviving anymore. She was rising. The international training compound resembled a miniature city built for war, a labyrinth of narrow alleys, abandoned cars, dim apartment blocks, and simulated marketplaces. It was designed to mimic the chaos of real urban combat, complete with hidden stairwells, fragile walls, and windows that framed shadowy silhouettes. The air buzzed with tension the moment Emily stepped into the central briefing hall. Representatives from 5 countries filled the room: Britain, Canada, Australia, Germany, and the United States. Their uniforms differed, but their eyes held the same sharp alertness. Some nodded politely as Emily entered. Others stared, unsure of how to interpret the woman standing at the American command podium. Her presence wasn't just unusual here, it was unprecedented. Commander Grant stood off to the side, arms folded, watching how she would handle the scrutiny. Admiral Hawthorne had chosen Emily explicitly to lead this mission, and Grant seemed determined to ensure she lived up to that trust. The first to speak was Captain James Morrison of the British SS, a man built like a stone pillar, with a stoic face and sharp blue eyes. "No disrespect, Lieutenant," he said in his clipped British tone, "but this is the first time I've operated under female command in a setting of this scale. I hope you understand the adjustment." The tension in the room tightened like a pulled wire. Emily didn't flinch. "Then it will be an educational experience for both of us, Captain," she replied evenly. "I intend to learn from your team's expertise as well." A few operators exchanged glances. Morrison's jaw shifted, something like respect, or at least curiosity, passing through his expression. The briefing began. Emily projected the building schematics onto the central screen. "Our first scenario is a terrorist takeover of a multi-level apartment complex. Hostiles armed. Civilians scattered. Some tied to explosive devices." She pointed to the marked entry points. "The British team excels at close-quarters assault. You'll breach here. Germans provide breaching support on the lower levels. Canadians focus on negotiation and diversion. Australians cover the outer perimeter with marksmen. My team will coordinate overall movement and extraction." She spoke with clarity, her voice steady, confident, not domineering, but undeniably in command. By the time she finished assigning roles, the initial tension had thinned into quiet cooperation. The first exercise began at dawn. Emily took her position inside the mobile command station, a small container filled with screens showing live helmet footage, building schematics, and radio logs. From here, she monitored 5 national teams moving into position. "Alpha team in place," Morrison reported. His voice was crisp, professional. "Bravo ready," echoed the German commander. The Canadian negotiator came online next. "Civilians detected on the 3rd floor. No casualties yet." Emily scanned the screens. "Copy. All teams, prepare for synchronized breach on my count. 3, 2, 1, execute." The thunder of breaching charges shook the compound. Doors splintered. Shadows darted across hallways. Emily tracked movements on multiple screens at once, adjusting teams in real time. "Alpha team, hostile moving toward your left corridor, 3 meters from your position. Australia, shift your marksman to the northeast rooftop. You have a clear line to support Bravo's advance. Canada, proceed with negotiation protocol B, buy us 30 seconds. Her voice never wavered. The exercise ended in record time, with 0 simulated casualties. As the teams regrouped for debriefing, the British observer, a stern, gray-haired major, spoke first. "Outstanding command and control," he said. "One of the most efficient urban operations I've seen executed by a multinational force." Morrison approached Emily afterward. His demeanor had softened, the skepticism replaced entirely by respect. "I was wrong. About you," he admitted quietly. "Your coordination saved us at least 2 simulated casualties. Consider me corrected." Emily offered a small smile. "We all adapted quickly. That's why it worked." But the second scenario proved even more demanding. A coordinated attack at 3 locations simultaneously. Emily had to split forces, each national team facing its own threats while relying on her for overarching strategy. She remained inside the command center, eyes scanning 3 different live feeds, mind juggling countless variables. This wasn't just tactics, it was sensory overload. She directed teams like pieces on a chessboard. Precise, fast, unrelenting. When the Canadian team met unexpected resistance, Emily made a split-second decision. "Redirect the Australian squad to reinforce them," she ordered. "Hostage count is higher than estimated." Grant, standing behind her, said nothing, but she could feel his approval like a steady presence. By the time the exercise ended, sweat clung to her back despite the air-conditioned room. She had spent the entire scenario balancing caution with aggression, adapting to unpredictable shifts. Another flawless operation. Another record time. The feedback from observers was overwhelmingly positive. Several approached her personally, congratulating her with firm handshakes. Morrison even clapped her shoulder in a gesture of genuine camaraderie. But with praise came pressure. 2 days later, Emily received another summons, this time to Admiral Hawthorne's office overlooking the training grounds. The Admiral gestured toward the chair without looking up from her reports. "You made quite an impression," Hawthorne said finally. "Several countries have already asked to collaborate with you on future operations." Emily nodded, unsure whether the Admiral viewed this as a compliment or a warning. "But success has a cost," Hawthorne continued, her tone shifting. "You're becoming visible, Lieutenant. Too visible, some might say. The more attention you attract, the more people will challenge your position." Emily met her gaze. "I didn't ask for visibility, ma'am. I just want to do the job." "I know," Hawthorne replied. "But leadership isn't just about doing the job. It's about navigating the political landscape that comes with it." Emily felt those words settle heavily on her shoulders. "Are you prepared for what comes next?" Hawthorne asked. Emily thought of the trainees who looked to her without hesitation. Thought of Grant, whose once skeptical gaze had grown steady with trust. Thought of the countless women she carried with her in every decision. She nodded. "Yes, ma'am. Whatever comes next, I'm ready." Hawthorne smiled faintly, an expression rare enough to feel like a medal. "Good. Because your next assignment will push you further than any training scenario. This time, it's not a simulation." Emily's breath stilled. The next chapter of her journey was about to begin. The deployment orders arrived on a gray, windless morning, quiet, almost anticlimactic considering how drastically they would change the course of Emily's career. She read them 3 times before lowering the paper, letting the weight of the assignment settle into her bones. This was no training exercise, no controlled environment, no simulated chaos. It was the real thing, a conflict zone where insurgency thrived in the shadow of politics, and where every mistake carved a permanent mark in someone's life. She boarded the transport aircraft with her task force, 24 operators handpicked from elite units across the branches. Each one was experienced, steady, and highly capable. Among them stood Commander Grant, assigned as her second-in-command. Emily couldn't deny the comfort of having him there, even if his expression remained professionally stoic. The flight stretched long into the night. Dusty winds buffeted the aircraft as it descended into the forward operating base, a sprawling camp framed by desert mountains and harsh, sun-scorched terrain. Emily stepped into the blinding light, taking in the distant rumble of artillery and the echo of engines from passing convoys. This world operated under its own rules. One misstep could ignite political fires far beyond the battlefield. Local forces greeted them with wary eyes. Some concealed their skepticism poorly. A few stared openly, whispering in a language Emily didn't understand. Grant leaned close. "They don't get many women commanding special operations," he murmured. "I've noticed," she replied, keeping her posture tall and controlled. Her first meeting with Colonel Rashid, the local commander, felt like walking through a minefield of cultural expectations. The room smelled faintly of dust and old maps. Rashid studied her with a long, thoughtful gaze. "You have combat experience?" he asked finally. "Yes, sir," Emily answered. "Direct action, reconnaissance, high-value target missions. My team is here to support your forces, not overshadow them." A brief silence. Then Rashid nodded, slowly, but with sincerity. "Very well. We will work together." Over the next weeks, Emily earned the respect of local forces the only way she knew how, through action. She trained with them under the blistering sun, corrected their formations, joined them on patrols, and stood by them during difficult debriefings. They saw her grit. They saw her precision. They saw her willingness to face danger alongside them rather than behind a desk. Respect grew. Word spread. Her first joint mission came unexpectedly. Intelligence identified a high-value insurgent leader inside a remote compound. Emily spent days preparing, studying terrain maps, rehearsing assault patterns, coordinating with Rashid to ensure their forces moved as a unified front. The mission began at 0300 hours beneath a moon cloak so thin it barely cast shadows. Local troops surged forward, with Emily overseeing from a vantage point, relaying instructions with quiet urgency. But the situation deteriorated quickly. The insurgents inside were far more numerous than anticipated. Emily listened to the crackling radio transmissions as Rashid's men were pinned down in a hail of gunfire. Request immediate support. Rashid's voice broke through the static. Grant looked at her. Your call. Strict rules of engagement prohibited direct American intervention unless absolutely necessary. But if she hesitated, the joint force would suffer catastrophic losses. Emily made her decision. Alpha Team, flank east. Bravo, establish suppressive fire. Move now. Grant didn't question her. The team executed flawlessly. The added pressure from American operators helped local forces break through. The compound fell. The insurgent leader was captured alive. And the political fallout? None. Instead, Rashid praised her publicly. Trust, once fragile, was solidifying. But victory came with a cost. 2 weeks later, during what should have been a routine training exercise in a desert valley, Emily sensed something was off. The air felt too still. Her instincts buzzed. When Williams, her sniper, whispered over comms, possible sniper nest, 11 o'clock high, her pulse sharpened. Seconds later, gunfire erupted. Insurgents stormed the training site from multiple angles. Bullets tore through the dust. Emily could almost taste the metallic tang of danger. She barked orders with controlled urgency. Take cover. Establish defensive perimeter. Keep the trainees behind the ridge. Her team moved with disciplined chaos, shielding the inexperienced local soldiers. She coordinated air support, repositioned units, and returned fire when necessary. Her voice was steady, uncannily steady, amid the storm. Grant later said she was the calmest person on the field. When helicopters finally arrived, driving the insurgents into retreat, Emily didn't retreat to safety. She crouched beside wounded local troops, binding torn flesh with makeshift tourniquets, giving quiet instructions, her hands steady even as sweat streaked dirt across her face. After that day, the locals began calling her the Iron Lady. Not as an insult, as reverence. But the real test waited, looming like a shadow behind distant mountains. Intelligence uncovered a massive insurgent training camp in a remote valley, complete with foreign advisors, anti-aircraft defenses, and plans for a devastating attack. Command wanted it neutralized. The mission would be brutal, risky, high stakes. Emily reviewed every grim detail late into the night. She weighed risks, casualties, political ramifications. Then came the revelation that changed everything. Hostages, humanitarian workers, were also being held inside. Now the mission required precision, not brute force. On insertion night, heavy snowfall clouded visibility. Emily's teams moved soundlessly across ridges, taking positions with ghost-like steps. From her command post overlooking the valley, she saw the camp glowing faintly under floodlights. Insurgents patrolled in tight, well-rehearsed formations. This was no amateur operation. Hostages confirmed in the eastern building, her recon team whispered. And possible explosives near the structure. Emily's chest tightened. If they breached recklessly, they could kill the very people they came to save. All teams, hold, she commanded, thinking rapidly. She split her operators into 4 groups: assault, security, extraction, and overwatch. Every detail had to align perfectly. Any mistake could unravel the entire mission. When the assault began, the valley exploded into controlled chaos. Emily coordinated movements across multiple sectors, monitoring the shifting threats. Her rescue team reached the eastern building, only to discover the hostages being moved. Intercepted radio chatter confirmed it. Emily reacted instantly. Hostages are mobile. Redirect to western sector. Maintain stealth. Avoid crossfire. The fight intensified, but she tracked each operator, each building breach, each threat neutralized. The adrenaline pushed her mind into razor focus. At the climax, her team secured the hostages, dismantled key enemy positions, captured crucial intelligence, and executed a flawless evacuation, all under her command. Every American operator returned alive. Every hostage survived. The insurgent camp was destroyed. The planned attack was prevented. When the helicopter lifted them away, the the valley shrinking beneath them, Emily allowed herself one breath, just one, of relief. Grant glanced at her from across the cabin, exhaustion etched in his features. "You did good," he said quietly. "Damn good." Back at base, higher command praised her leadership. International partners sent commendations. Her name circulated in briefings across Washington. But none of that mattered as much as what she felt inside, a deeper understanding of what leadership truly meant. Not strength, not perfection, but the courage to decide when everything is on the line. Months later, as she prepared to return home, Emily stood alone beneath the rising sun. The desert wind brushed gently across her uniform. She thought of the young woman who had stepped onto the training field years ago, the one who endured whispers, doubt, and skepticism. That woman was gone. In her place stood a leader hardened by fire, sharpened by conflict, and defined by choices only she could make. She had walked through every challenge, every storm, and emerged unbroken. A phoenix carved from discipline, grit, and relentless purpose. Her story wasn't over. But this chapter, her rise, was complete.